Need to make sure that you always are speaking into a microphone. Yeah, questions, make sure the microphone.
All right, well, you and I are gonna share this one.
This way?
Yeah. Must be the
Okay.
PowerPoint. Yes.
Turn off your phones.
Already did it.
Forgot.
Marcy called me today to find out about the meeting and my hearing aids weren't.
Oh, no.
And
Oh, no.
I knew the minute when I couldn't hear him. You could hear me, right? I couldn't hear you, yeah. First day that I forgot to check and see if they had linked. I know. But if I didn't have them in, I could hear fine. It's just that with the Bluetooth thing on the phone, if they're linked and it isn't turned on, then you don't hear anything.
Do you have budget meetings with the chamber? No. Sure. That's not right. The median age in Bandon's not 58.
Huh?
I said the median age in Bandon's not 58.
Yeah, I was reading that, yeah. More like
So
70.
now June,
Have you heard from Bear? Like 70.
if not, I just text him and I tried to call him, he didn't answer.
And he picked up his book,
Yes, he did.
but Mr. Gearhart didn't pick up his book.
No, because he requested an ebook.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So maybe he's on there.
He's not on Zoom either.
Be out of town, maybe?
It's
No,
only
I haven't heard.
2 meetings.
Huh?
There's only 2 meetings.
No, I know.
Need to-
Well, if he's
They
out
were
of town, though,
somewhere.
Yeah,
There.
never know.
maybe why he didn't.
I think they were. I don't remember. I think Beth said
He
something.
did pick up his book, right?
No,
Did she say, okay? He could be out of town.
but I guess he wanted it to come on. You sent him a packet on digital, right?
Yes,
Oh, he wanted it. Okay.
he wanted a digital.
And
Oh.
Renee Taylor has the flu, so she, rather than sit next to anybody and expose us, she stayed home, so that's
Is she
good.
gonna be on Zoom?
I don't think so. She
Okay.
has other problems too.
Okay. Oh, chamber thing. Did you order your ticket? I gotta get mine tonight.
Yeah,
I almost texted you the day. I figured you were going.
yeah. I went down to that Creations, or they had a mixer down there.
Oh, yeah.
I went to that.
Okay.
It's cute.
Who designed your parking lot back there?
I can't believe they got so many
Boy.
people in there because it's so.
Yeah,
convenient
They
there.
weren't hard.
I think it was SHN. I think
I don't
SHN
go
designed the
there
parking lot. And
Which is
AG is doing
Yeah.
People in the chamber, and me.
our building next to Prowler.
It was.
We have 2 different people
Yeah.
doing it.
All right, we'll call the meeting to order. Call the meeting to order. June, do you have the roll call?
Bear is now online.
Bear is on, all right.
There he is.
Thank you.
Hi, Bear.
Okay.
Tell him to unmute himself.
Okay, the first item of business is to elect a chairman.
I nominate. Shamma.
All in favor? I nominate Madeline as vice chair. All in favor? Now we'll proceed. All right, we're gonna have the presentation and discussion of the budget by our, well, I don't know, whether our finance director or city manager.
I'll give a run through the presentation, but we do have staff here to field questions.
Okay, good. Very impressive.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, and members of the Budget Committee. I'd first like to recognize city staff who's in the room today. We do have my finance director to my left, Paula. And we also have staff along the wall. This is the executive team of the City of Bannon. And collectively, we work together to develop this budget that we are presenting this evening for discussion and consideration. So thank you to the executive team. In the first slide, we have this evening just a rundown of issues that we have currently facing the city. And the first and foremost issue is revenue. Cities are always in the business of trying to generate revenue to support the programs and services that we are lawfully required to provide as a local municipality. The reason for that is that despite the fact that the city does not have the ability to generate sufficient user fee revenue, which would supplement what we have in the form of programs and services, we are committed to maintaining the existing level of services that the Bandon residents have come to appreciate and that the council has directed us to continue to provide. So to do that, we are committed to maintaining a certain standard of service and programming for the community. The other important component here is having sufficient ongoing reoccurring revenue to support the maintenance of our facilities and also to proceed with the capital improvements that are required throughout the city. We do live on the coast, a very harsh environment. So that requires special attention with regards to maintaining our facilities properly. And so with that, we do need ongoing reoccurring money for improvements and also the purchase of capital equipment. What we do here at the city is a very expensive business, and we'll get into details later in the presentation. For example, we do have a digger derrick truck that cost approximately $700,000 to purchase, and that's just supporting the electric utility. We also have development. There's been a surge of inquiries from prospective developers. Bandon is an attractive destination, not only because of the community itself, but because of the attractions in the form of Old Town, the majestic beauty of our coastline, and just the hospitality of the residents here in Bandon. There is interest in facilitating new development. So we as staff are tasked with ensuring that the development that occurs in the future is responsible and that it is complementary to the city of Bandon. With so much history here, we as staff are committed to doing that. We do have a deficit we are facing in two of our utilities with regards to the water and wastewater utility. And so that kind of identifies what the primary issues that the city's facing at this point, which led us to develop this budget that we have before you. Next slide, please.
I know it is.
So in the budget that we have presented here for
What's this?
year
This
25,
budget?
26,
I forgot that. I was-
the total appropriated budget amount is 41 million.
Outside.
And the prior fiscal year was at 39.2 million. So that's a net increase of 1.6 million. Oh, it's okay. So we do have employees. The city of Bandon is currently staffed with 43.75 employees. We were joking earlier today that 0.75 is 3/4 of a staff member in our planning department that enforces our gorse abatement program. And for fiscal year 24-25, in comparison, there were 42.75 staff members. We have 2 staff members that will be added this fiscal year. One is a management level sergeant in our police department, funded by a Bandon Dunes contribution. And we have a proposal to retain a full-time planning assistant to support the planning department and its operations. With that, we are also eliminating one position that was earmarked last year. It was a position to be shared between the water and wastewater utility. However, there's no need for that at this point. So that results in an increase of one full-time position from an operating expenditure standpoint. So we have 2 types of funding sources. We have ongoing reoccurring revenue, and that's really what the city is concentrating and focusing its efforts on generating, because ongoing continuous revenue supports our ongoing continuous operations. So every year there's a certain amount of program services that we are required to lawfully provide. And with that, we are ensuring that we have sufficient revenue to cover that cost. The other component or revenue source is one-time funding resources. And that could be the fund balance of the prior fiscal year. It could be grants, it could be donations. And these are usually intended to fund one-time capital improvement projects or equipment purchases. So as listed here, the one-time proposed changes in the budget equate to about $8.8 million. The ongoing operating budget changes are approximately $472,000. Next slide, please. These are a table highlighting the key budget changes. Again, this is focusing on one-time capital improvements or capital equipment purchases. The highlighted items in here identify probably the most significant allocations. So we have proposed the acquisition of 2 fully outfitted police vehicles at approximately $170,000. And we have the digger derrick truck, and this is to set poles. Before coming to Bandon, I had no idea what a digger derrick truck is, but I am becoming more familiar with that now. And that's a costly purchase of $700,000. We anticipate to have that delivered hopefully this year. It's taken about 2 years to have it manufactured to our specs. We have an electric service truck at $300,000. Transformers, as we own a power or electric utility company, we have to have transformers on hand for when they explode or damage because of storms. The lead time to acquire transformers is between 12 to 16 months. So applying funding for the acquisition of transformers, we hope to receive in about 1.5 years or so. There are projects that are ongoing. We are interested in undergrounding our utilities, and this is an example of that. We have $300,000 earmarked for that purpose. Next slide, please. Again, on this page, we are identifying the most significant capital improvement projects and or equipment purchases. We have a city streets paving package that we are proposing at a cost of $2 million. Maintaining our streets and roadway system is very expensive, as you can see by the allocation of $2 million. Projects to improve the Fillmore Avenue pump station. This supports our wastewater utility. That's at $1.25 million. A new water clarifier that supports water services at the city's water facility. And that is a cost of approximately $1.9 million. What we've also done is, for budgeting purposes, we've created districts or areas, and we have 3 outlined here in yellow. We've got the Civic Center. So instead of identifying each capital improvement or capital purchase within the entire Civic Center complex, which we're in today, we've just coupled that and grouped it as one project area. The same with Old Town. So the extensive Old Town, including the museum, we've assigned $100,000 for what we anticipate in the form of potential either capital improvement projects or the purchase of capital amenities and city park improvements. So the city park itself is now encompassing the library, the Sprague Theater, the community center, the senior center, and the extents of the city park. We have the allocated amounts highlighted in yellow. Next slide. So these are highlighting the key budget changes, and this goes back to the recurring operating expenditures. I discussed briefly that we are adding 1 full-time police sergeant. Again, this is being funded by the contribution made by Bandon Dunes. At the last city council meeting, we entered into an MOU that allows for Bandon Dunes to generously contribute approximately $350,000 to support law enforcement here in Bandon. Because of the 1% bed tax that's being imposed and because of the fact that it's starting in July, we won't necessarily receive the full breadth of the $350,000 this year. So we're projecting to receive $262,000. Wastewater cleaning. We also have a requirement to inspect all of our wastewater systems. And for that, we intend to retain a contractor that will provide the cammering or videotaping of our infrastructure. And we have earmarked $100,000 for those contract services. We intend to every year complete about 20% of the system. And so over the course of 5 years, the entire wastewater system would be inspected and analyzed from that standpoint. And lastly, we do have the proposal for a new planning assistant. The planning assistant will be working the public counter and lending support to the planning staff. We, with that, touched on briefly the elimination of the full-time utility worker that was shared between water and wastewater. That provides for a cost savings of $75,000 annually. You may be wondering why that position is less than an entry-level planning assistant. And that's because we are budgeting, funding, and setting aside funding for potential overtime needs. And so that's the net difference. Next slide, please. So beyond just recurring revenue and one-time revenue, there are legitimate funding categories or types. We have the general fund. The general fund is probably the most desired funding source to the city. It is unrestricted. It could be spent on anything that the city council directs staff to expend this money on. It could provide for sidewalks. It could provide for additional staff, and it could purchase new equipment as needed. So that is, I think, the most important fund that we do have. Enterprise funds. The city has 3 utilities. We have the electric utility, the wastewater and water utilities. Enterprise funds are designed to operate as for-profit businesses. And the reason for that is the service we provide, whether it's power in the electric utility, the system is designed to be fully funded by the end user through user fees. In addition to funding the operating cost, there is usually additional funding to support the maintenance, the expansion, the purchase of capital equipment such as the digger derrick truck. Those are things that are inherently required and why enterprise funds operate as they do. We do have special revenue funds that are restricted. We have county library funds that are generated through tax revenue from a district. That district contributes funding to the library and helps fund everything that we do at the library, including staffing cost. We have a local option street tax. This was voted in by the community, the residents and voters here in Bandon, and that has been very instrumental in being able to pave our roadway and streetway system. That is where the $2 million is coming from. The local option street tax is set to sunset in 8 years. We would hope at that time we would request and seek voter approval for an extension. And the tourist development fund is restricted, and those monies are earmarked for use in promoting local tourism throughout the city of Bandon. We have the capital fund and debt service fund to conclude. Next slide. General fund. So the city's general fund, which is made up by those line items in the prior slide, total $7.6 million. Just as a matter of highlighting the current permanent property tax here in Bandon, everybody's familiar with that. Annually, it generates approximately $242,000, which is 3.7% of the $7.6 million. Historically, in government, local municipalities were fully funded by property tax. That was throughout the entire country. However, because of movements that have led to measures such as 5 and 50 here in Oregon, Proposition 13 in California, that is no more or no longer the case. We do have transient occupancy tax, TOT as they call it. This is the largest and most significant revenue source that supports general fund revenue generation. It is the only revenue source that we currently have available to us that's expected to increase over time when more hotels and beds come online. So Bandon has evolved from a lumber-based economy to a fishing-based economy, and today primarily a tourist-based economy. So as seen in this illustration here, that's projected to increase once we have additional hotels and units come online. Intergovernmental funding, we have it 695,000, but this gives you a general idea of how the general fund is comprised and where these funding sources come from. Next slide. This is a more detailed illustration of the permanent property tax. And that is computed based on 0.458% of $1,000 in assessed valuation. As I mentioned, it generates $242,000 annually on average. We are one of the lowest in the state of Oregon. But with that, you know, there are other temporary property taxes that are imposed that help support what we do here. But one thing is not changing, and that's our permanent property tax base. Next slide. And for the record, we have no proposal or interest in altering that, or it's just a matter of fact. So reserves, we, at the direction of the city council, had a very prudent financial decision, and they directed that staff accrue annually 5% of the unrestricted general fund balance and earmark that for a rainy day fund. So for an operating budget of 6.5 million, that would equate to a total reserve of 1.3 million. And in fiscal year 25-26, the projected contribution is 134,000. And to date, we have accrued 969,000 of the $1.3 million goal. So we're just approximately 300 some odd $1,000 short of that goal. The council may elect to accrue additional funds beyond the 20%, and that would just be at the discretion of the council. Next slide. We went through a comprehensive reorganization here at the city of Bandon. We were looking at how to maximize operational efficiency and effectiveness. And this has taken over about 1.5 years working with city staff and developing the organizational chart. And so, of course, we have the city council is the apex or lead or head of the city, providing policy direction to me, the city manager. And as the chief executive officer of the city, I then am tasked with carrying out these policy directives and assign those duties on to the department heads, which then delegate those assignments down to their staff members. So with that, the city council has the ability to appoint at will public employees. That includes me as a city manager, the city recorder, the city treasurer, which is also the finance director or administrative services director, the city attorney, and the municipal court judge. The council also has commissions and committees that lend support and provide recommendations to the council for consideration. We have the planning commission, the budget committee, of which you all are members, the library board, and citizen involvement. For efficiency purposes, because we have very limited staffing resources, we've consolidated the planning commission and citizen involvement into one advisory body of the city. In directly lending support to me is the assistant to the city manager. That individual provides administrative assistance to me on a daily basis. And for times I need additional assistance in prodding the department heads to produce work that has been assigned to them, the assistant to the city manager is very effective at ensuring work that's been delegated or assigned is produced based on the direction I provided in carrying out those greater directives of the city council. So these are the departments. As I mentioned, we do have all the department heads here today to field any questions. We have the electric utility. They are also responsible for energy conservation, community development. I've expanded the role of the planning department to include community development functions because there's more that goes on in that operation that goes well beyond just the planning duties. So in planning, you have current everyday planning and then long-range planning. And in some cities, you have transportation planning. Economic development is a division that I would like to see evolve here over time when we have the additional funding and staff and resources. Economic development would be tasked with attracting, retaining, and growing local businesses to support what we do here. That'd be very tailored to maybe attracting more businesses to occupy vacant buildings throughout the city or in Old Town, working in partnership with the chamber. We also have code enforcement. So code enforcement is largely tasked with property maintenance compliance. So yeah, the property maintenance provisions of the municipal code. We have the code enforcement officer that goes out there and ensures that both privately owned residential property and commercial businesses are maintained in accordance with our standards. Because we are a tourist-based economy, it's very important that we focus some of our attention on maintaining our commercial attractions so that when we have patrons or visitors come to the city of Bandon, you know, beyond the charm and the beautiful conditions that are here, you know, it'd be nice for them to enjoy the commercial spaces and get them to come back to the city of Bandon. Vegetation management, been a leader in proactively enforcing gorse abatement, and that falls under the community development department. Previously, the finance department was just that and has been retitled as the administrative services department. Administrative services provides support to every city department and function that we have here. And so under administrative services, you have finance, utility billing. You can't necessarily have a utility without being able to build customers. We have human resources, accounts payable, and payroll. Public works, we have assigned the water utility and wastewater utility under public works, under the public works director. And the public works department oversees road and street maintenance, building and infrastructure maintenance and improvements, and engineering. We contract out with an independent engineering firm that lends all the technical engineering support in reviewing engineering, civil engineering plans, conducting inspections of improvements that are designed to meet the specifications. We have community and cultural services. This is a new department that we formed, and this department encompasses the library, the community center, the Sprague Theater, and in the future, if there is the ability to accommodate a recreation division where we have funding to support programs and services for sponsoring youth programs in the city, this would be the natural fit. And as part of that complex or facility, we also have the city park. Police is, of course, what they are known for doing, and that's ensuring and protecting the safety of the community. And they're also charged with emergency management or preparation. Next slide. So this is a breakdown of the department expenditures. And I always like to start off by highlighting the police department. As you can see, it's the most expensive thing that we do here in the form of services. Everybody likes police and everybody funds police. So with that, we have an appropriation of $2.1 million for the police department. Again, of that, we have 265,000 up to 350,000 of those funds being donated by way of a generous contribution made by Bandon Dunes. Public Works, streets, they've been appropriated 418,000 from the general fund, and Public Works park maintenance. So the parks throughout the city need to be maintained, and the public crews are responsible for that. And we've allocated 475,000 in that area. Mayor and council are very thrifty, and here we have an appropriation of close to $50,000 for next fiscal year. And the executive department, which is myself and the administrative team, at 498,000. And we'll end this with the administrative service department at 463, which this kind of gives a overall view of the use of general fund and how it's appropriated citywide through our departments. Next slide. So the executive department, which is spearheaded by myself, our fiscal year appropriation, as I mentioned in the previous slide, is 498,000. That's a net increase of 44,000 or 9.75%. Under funding sources, in addition to the general fund, enterprise funds support the executive department through the electric, water, and wastewater utility, because a portion of my daily duties are assigned to overseeing the city's utilities. The staff here works on utility, whether it's electric, water, wastewater, on a daily basis. And based on the amount of time that I work on the utilities, that equates to the amount or the appropriation or percentage of that that's funded by the enterprise funds, and that equates to 65% there. Next slide. The administrative services department has been budgeted for 463,000, which is an increase of 10,000 or 2.2%. And the same goes for this department. Enterprise funds support the operation because a percentage of the staff's time works on the electric, water, wastewater utilities, whether it's through billing or managing the accounts, authorizing the expenditure of funding, helping with the bids, very involved. So with that, 80% of their ongoing operating cost is funded by the enterprise funds. Municipal court is budgeted at $76,900. It's an increase of $6,156 or 8.7%. Last fiscal year in 2024, 471 traffic citations were issued. And this next fiscal year, we anticipate that court fines will generate approximately $75,000 in revenue for the city. Not that we are interested in charging our police officers to cite individuals for traffic violations, but for every violation and citation, there's a portion of that that is deposited back to the city, and this represents that amount. Next slide. Police, 2.1 million. That's an increase of 340 or 19.3%. Is listed here. Funding sources, you have property tax, TOT, utility taxes, transfers, and the one I want to highlight is the donation made by Bandon Dunes. So this net increase of 340,000 in concept would be offset by the contribution moving forward by the Bandon Dunes Golf Resort. So with their contribution, I would just like to point out that we anticipate buying 2 fully outfitted vehicles. One will be to support the acquisition of these new hiree in the form of the sergeant. And the other, the city has been tasked with acquiring a new police vehicle every year for the foreseeable future to replenish their fleet so that they have fully functioning operating police vehicles We've historically been very thrifty and conservative on that front. We just recently had the ability to purchase a used vehicle for one that was damaged during a storm. Much of our fleet has been purchased used. That's not normally the case when you're dealing with law enforcement agencies. So it's good to have the support of the council to earmark funding for that purpose. Next slide. So we have the fire district. Our contribution annually to the fire district in next fiscal year would be $135,000 from the general fund. That's an increase of $3,309 or 2.5%. The Bannon Rural Fire District is funded by taxes assessed on properties, in addition to contributions by the city in the form of general fund revenue. We had recently contributed funding to support the installation of a new antenna to improve emergency communications. I understand that it's been installed and is now fully operational, which we're happy to hear. Also, we are working to support the district in funding the 911 dispatch services. As with the police department, the fire district is reliant on 911 dispatch services. These services were previously provided by the county. However, due to financial issues they were facing, they shuttered their dispatch program. And fortunately, the city of Coos Bay stepped up at that time and offered to provide the services. Last council meeting, we just entered into a contract for the next year for the city of Coos Bay to provide 911 dispatch. Next slide. So Public Works, probably the hardest working department, that and electric utility, whether it's raining, storming outside, you can find our crews out there at all times of the day, all weather conditions. So for fiscal year 25-26, they've been appropriated $475,000 to help maintain the streets and roadway system here. That's an increase of $33,000 or 7.5%. There's been a great interest in the community as of late to request the installation of more sidewalks citywide. The purpose for that is to separate pedestrian from vehicle traffic, enhancing additional pedestrian safety, and primarily in the high traffic areas, whether it's Beach Loop or Seabird. Sidewalks are very expensive. So we have heard the residents, but that'll require some creative financing, whether it's through grant funding or the potential to look at new revenue streams to support that. Pavement management plans. Cities typically have a pavement management plan for all of the city's street system. And with that, it identifies the entire number of streets, the mileage of streets that are within the jurisdiction. It rates their condition. And with that, they prioritize which streets in the community are in need of the greatest repair, today versus streets that could be deferred for a couple years. Typically, a pavement management plan would be for a 10-year projection. And with that, I think there's a desire and interest on the part of the city moving forward to look at developing a pavement management program so that after the span of 10 years, the entire city-owned roadway and street system is fully repaved. And then you just start over and maybe adjust the program to identify, what are the streets that need the greatest attention at that time. We have had support from the council and recently awarded a contract to a traffic engineering firm to look at traffic calming measures on Seabird. That's expected to commence in June. The formulation of recommendations will be as a result of soliciting public input at community meetings, possibly a survey. We will compile that information and present it to the council in an effort to receive direction as to what type of traffic calming measures would be appropriate for Seabird. And then at that time, funding would be appropriated to incorporate whatever we can in the form of effective traffic calming measures on Seabird. Public Works, new this year, is entering into a master paving road repair contract. Historically, Public Works would identify a project that needs either concrete work or asphalt repaving. They would circulate bids, solicit proposals. From that, they would identify the contractor, award the bid, and complete the work. What we are attempting to do now, and it's common in jurisdictions to do that, is to award a contract for a contractor that is specializing in asphalt or concrete work, and they would essentially be on retainer. So whenever projects come up throughout the fiscal year, rather than going through the entire process, which is very labor intensive and time consuming, we would have these pre-qualified contractors on a list that had been previously approved by the city council to complete these projects. So that should really increase efficiency, reduce cost, and also streamline the entire system here. Next slide. So for parks, and this pertains to park maintenance, we are appropriating $418,000. It's an increase in $94,000 or 29.07%. And the park is probably one of our most heavily used and beloved amenities that's patronized not only by the local residents, but I think guests of our community. So to treat that and ensure that that amenity is cared for properly, it requires some TLC, and that is a recurring ongoing expenditure for the city. We are also in the process of updating the park master plan. Council has authorized staff to retain a landscape architectural firm that is conducting an assessment, site analysis of the park, working with community members to solicit input about their recreational needs and preferences. And based on the environmental conditions, what we currently have out there in the form of park space, and to address the needs of the community, that would likely result in conceptual plans developed for a park master plan. And once you have a plan in place, you can incrementally fund the improvements over time. So that, I think, is an important component of what we anticipate doing with regards to the city park in the future. Next slide. So the planning department, my background is planning, 25 years in community development. It is probably the most litigious department. It could likely land you in a litigation or lawsuit very easily. So the job and duties and responsibilities of the planning staff in that operation are highly technical, very skilled. And for that, our budget, we've allocated $533,000, which is an increase of $111,000 or 26.4%. The most significant issue that we'll be facing in the near future is the loss of our planning director. Planning director has informed city staff and the council that she would rather farm for garlic. And I don't really see the attraction or why she'd want to do that instead of coming here and master planning our city. But we are in the process of recruiting her replacement. There'll be big shoes to fill. We have identified a couple of qualified candidates, but the recruitment's not over, but that'll be the task that we will focus on in the immediate future so that we have a qualified planning director that could then help implement the city council's policy directives as it relates to land use and development. Historically, the planning department has been understaffed. So with the vacancy of, we call her Dana AI, we will need additional planning resources in the department to make up that loss, in addition to retaining a new community development director with an emphasis and expertise in planning. So despite how difficult and complicated Oregon land use laws are and the kind of skill set that's required to be an effective director, we were just not very excited to receive information that we are now required to comply with new FEMA regulations that essentially make it almost impossible to develop any new development within low-lying areas of the city, more specifically Old Town. The amount of work that I believe this will create for the planning staff is tremendous. We are looking at when there's a development application, perhaps burdening that requirement fully on the developer. But we have yet to navigate that, and we'll let you know how that turns out. But it's going to be a very dicey road ahead with regards to satisfying or complying with the FEMA regulations that are now imposed on local municipalities. Noteworthy items, we have planning permit fees that generate approximately $50,000 in revenue. We are adding that to planning assistant. We are in the process of updating the city's transportation system plan, and we are embarking on a housing code update to address the missing middle component. And that really is a fancy term for, you have housing programs for low-income individuals. You have market rate housing that's being developed in the community, but what is being done for the workforce housing component? And this will help us address that once the plan is prepared. Next slide. So one of the facilities at the city park complex, as we kind of refer to that internally now, is the barn. We are allocating $94,000 in general fund money. That's an increase of $1,300 or 1.4%, and that's a decrease. I'd like to highlight that. And a lot of that has to do with project related matters and expenditures. There's interest on the part of the director, who's also our senior librarian, in the back room here, to prepare a strategic plan to program and identify what the city facilities will look like over the next 5 or so years. And so with that, I think they are interested in embarking on preparing a strategic plan for the facilities at the city park complex. We are also conducting a detailed review of the barn's fee schedule. We are looking to ensure that we are doing our best to recoup the operating expenses whenever the facility is rented. Yet we're also sensitive to the fact that we want any rate increases in the fee schedule to be reasonable. And that's why we're also surveying adjacent communities to determine, what the benchmark is. Where are we? Are we too low? Are we in the middle? Are we just, within the 75 percentile? So we're in that process right now. We expect to have reports presented to the council in the near future, and we'll present the proposed fee schedule and provide all the supporting information and comparisons to the council for consideration in the future. Next slide. Sprague Theater is another facility at the city park complex, appropriating $107,000, which in this case is an increase of $2,800 and 2.7%. I was informed that they have brought the very popular movie nights back, and they are scheduling plays that are designed to support, what they provide there in the form of programming. We are also conducting a comprehensive review of the Sprague Theater's fee schedule, and we again are going to be very cautious in looking at comparisons. At the end of the day, we want the facility to be used and reasonable. So with that, we will bring back a report to the council in the future on that matter. Next slide. Special revenue is a fancy way of saying restricted funds. So that means not like general funds where you could spend them on anything. There are funds that we have that are restricted. They can only be earmarked for specific things. In the tourist development fund, we have in this fiscal year's budget 1.5 allocated. It's an increase of $444,000 $921 or 41.2%. We recently been tasked in negotiating a new agreement with the Chamber of Commerce. And the Chamber is retained almost like a consultant for the city. And they are charged with promoting local tourism to support our businesses and to champion the city of Bannon from a tourism standpoint. In the agreement, we were able to cap their annual contribution at $225,000 annually. We've also allowed for incremental increases or escalators that are pursuant or subject to CPI adjustments moving forward. Out of this fund, we are proposing to allocate $400,000, which would be the city's matching contribution to receive a potential grant, $4 million. And in conversation with our planning director earlier this afternoon, I was informed that $4 million provides for just under a mile of sidewalks. So streets, sidewalks are very expensive, but we've heard the residents loud and clear. We've received the council direction, so we'll continue to identify funding sources to help support this. Civic Center complex, as I mentioned, that's the entirety of the Civic Center, which we are at today, including the police department. We've allocated $210,000. We anticipate that will fund the resiting of City Hall. As I mentioned, the elements that we face here in Bannon are very, very difficult to deal with. And to ensure that our City Hall is properly cared for, we will retain a contractor to resite the City Hall, just like we did with the Sprague Theater, and paint the building. There's also a desire to construct a kennel enclosure for the dog kennel that we have just outside Paula's office. You go in there and conduct a meeting, and you can definitely tell when there's a dog in the kennel. So this will provide some shelter and comfort for the animal. Old Town, inclusive of the museum. We've been approached to provide funding to support the museum. Funding will be allocating the amount of $25,000 for light poles, benches, and bike racks. Out of this account, we will also fund the fireworks display at $27,000. And the balance, again, we'll have available for any additional projects that the council directs us to implement in the Old Town area. The city park complex, we've allocated $40,000 to general fund or special revenue funding. Community beautification is our next slide. For fiscal year 25-26, we're allocating $84,000, representing an increase of 24.7%. This historically or is funded by franchise fees. So for the city, we have an exclusive contract or franchise agreement with the waste hauler. And in exchange for having that exclusive contract with the city, we receive monetary contributions. And that is what we use to fund this particular community beautification program. We have a business improvement or big grant. The grant is intended to encourage business owners to upgrade the exterior of their buildings with regards to enhanced architectural features. We have appropriated $50,000 for this, and every qualifying business is entitled to receive a grant award of $10,000. And today, I believe we have 3 applications. Next slide. Library. As I mentioned, this is funded by a district. The Coos County Library District has 8 libraries that it supports, of which is the Bannon Library. We have appropriated $861,000 in this account, which is an increase of $87,269 or 11.3%. Since the funds are restricted and they're generated by an assessment in the form of a tax, the appropriation that or the methodology that was historically used was not necessarily based on the amount of use that a library encountered, whether it be the number of patrons that patronized the library, the programming that was offered. So I think for the past 20 years, there's been an effort on the part of the 8-member libraries to revisit and develop a new methodology. And our city council, the mayor's been very supportive of this. The city council, we've remitted letters. Ultimately, with the support of the council and the efforts of the city librarian, we were able to convince the county commissioners to adopt a new funding methodology that was more scientifically based, more equitable. And for Bannon, that means over the next 4 years, it's being implemented incrementally. After the 4-year incremental increases, we expect to receive on average $200,000 in additional funding to support our library. And I don't know if you guys have been in the library, but they have really cool programs, not only for the youth in the community, but for adults. I think they have escape rooms. I've yet to be invited to partake in one, but they do really good programming there. And I think that's a large part of why they're so popular and there's so many patrons for our library. Next slide. Streets and drainage. This is an essential city service. Cities are required to do their part with regards to maintaining streets and proper drainage. So as I mentioned, our street paving package is at $2 million. We also are working to replace the Ferry Creek Bridge. It no longer meets ODOT standards. So we are collaborating with ODOT and an engineering company. For this year, we are appropriating $244,000 for that project. There's also contingency funding that we've assigned because of unexpected instances where we have to do street drainage repair. That is at $650,000. We also have additional funding sources for streets at $2.2 million, and the list of funding sources just below that. Next slide. Enterprise funds. That's a fancy way of saying public utilities that are intended to be for business or for profit. So some of the issues we touched on previously, user fees. The city council is restricted as a result of a voter initiated measure that resulted in a charter amendment, does not have the ability to adjust fees unless they are put to a public vote and approved by the populace. What that has caused is that despite the fact that the cost of doing business increases annually because of external factors such as inflation, material cost, and labor, we don't necessarily have the ability to match those increases in our utility. So that requires an additional contribution of our general fund to support that. This has resulted in the need for deferred maintenance in our utilities. And deferred maintenance is more expensive in the long run because instead of regularly maintaining as you would a boat that's in the water, we don't have the ability to maintain our infrastructure supporting our utilities. So the only time we actually conduct improvements is when they are in need because something broke or was damaged. And that is a lot more costly than, programming money to provide ongoing reoccurring maintenance to prevent that from happening. So with that, we are subsidizing not only the operating cost of our utilities, but the long-term maintenance. We are subsidizing the expansion. We are subsidizing the purchase of new equipment that is very expensive. And that's at the expense of the city being able to use general fund, which is the preferred funding source without limitations or restrictions or strings attached to support the provision of city services and programs, completing capital improvement projects such as sidewalks on Seabird or Beach Loop. It prevents us from conducting or improving infrastructure and allowing for its expansion to support the development needs here of the community. And of course, everybody loves police. It prevents us from providing, new vehicles for our law enforcement officers or providing the additional support they need. But fortunately, right now, we are fully staffed in the PD, and we're very excited about the addition of a new sergeant. So Bandon is safe. Next slide. Of the three utilities, the electric utility is by far doing the best. The entire budget for the electric utility is 12.1 million. That's an increase of 1.3 million or 12.8%. The greatest issue that we see in the near future is the Bonneville Power Administration, or BPA as it's called, is expected to increase its fees for purchasing and transmitting power in October. They haven't yet conveyed to the cities what that fee increase will be, but we're projecting it to be around 4% or so. And those added costs, again, will trickle down to added expenses for the city and ultimately the end user down the road, and that's beyond our control. Also, in the electric utility, we're very sensitive to doing our part to prevent wildfires. And so they are embarking on a fire mitigation plan update. As I mentioned, utilities are very expensive. The cost of doing business is very expensive. For example, the digger derrick at $700,000 for that vehicle, to me seems to be quite expensive. But that's the cost of doing business as a local utility. There's also an ongoing requirement for us to go throughout the entire city, inspect power poles, identify those that have been subject to deterioration and that pose a potential public safety hazard. We are required to go through the entire system on an annual basis, and we have programmed the replacement of 24 power poles throughout the city and the service area. Next slide. Public Works Water Utility. The budget for the water operation, and this is probably the most important utility that we have. The treatment of water is a matter of public safety. If we aren't able to properly treat water, that could end up in having individuals be hospitalized or potentially killed because of not properly being able to treat the water. So with that, we have a budget of 7.3 million. That represents a decrease of 344,000. It's a combination of the completion of projects and also the retirement of a longtime staff member at the executive management level. Operating fund subsidies currently just for the ongoing continuous annual operations are about 132,000. But what that doesn't show, it doesn't show the cost of expanding, maintaining the infrastructure. It doesn't identify the capital improvement project cost. It doesn't identify the cost for capital equipment purchases. And those are all burdens of the general fund, which we can't necessarily fund at this point, as to the reason why you have deferred maintenance. Ongoing dredging of the Ferry Creek will be required moving forward. The Ferry Creek is a raw water storage facility that we use to draw water from. That is then treated at our water plant and then distributed citywide through our infrastructure. The dredging project that was allocated for last year was completed. So we have been able to dredge sediment that was deposited over time in the impoundment, limiting how much raw water storage capacity it provided. However, during that work, there was a landslide that occurred. It resulted in additional sediment being deposited in the impoundment and damaging the intake. So working with ODFW and the contractor, we've all chipped in. Our public works crews were out there able to remove the additional sediment, temporarily shore up the bank and fund the replacement of the intake. So now it's fully operational. There's still some work to do. This is going to be spearheaded by ODFW, acting as the lead. Our contribution to that effort would be $36,000, and that's to install riprap or shore up the bank's impoundment adjacent to the newly installed intake. Next slide. Wastewater utility. This is probably the utility that requires the most amount of attention and that needs some significant upgrades and improvements and maintenance in its facility. Fiscal year 25-26 is budgeted at 4.4 million, which is a decrease of 612,000 or 12.1% for the same reasons as the decrease that was experienced in the water utility. Our contribution again is 78,000 annually in operating cost. But as with the water utility, it doesn't convey the requirement demand placed on the general fund for ongoing maintenance, the expansion, the requirement for capital improvements, repairs, and the purchase of capital equipment. Noteworthy items we have for next fiscal year: Fillmore Avenue Pump Station. We are working towards addressing the needs at the pump station. The master control panel at our wastewater utility is obsolete. It's no longer provided service or supported. So that would be a significant project and improvement. And I believe the blower room is being re-roofed this year. Is that right, Tim? Yep. Next slide. Debt service funds. This is a fancy way of saying loans. So this table identifies loans that we currently have out or bonds. We had a bond that was issued for a new water plant building. Our payment this year would be 165,000 with a balance of 1.8 million. The other most significant payment here is for the water sewer capital improvements at 370,000. The outstanding balance there is 4.2 million. So in fiscal year 25-26, the total amounts paid towards our debt service totals $739,971, with an outstanding balance owed of 7.14 million. Next slide. Urban Renewal Agency. The city has 2 urban renewal agencies. Next slide. We have District 1 that encompasses Old Town, and District 2 is comprised of the City Park, Library, Sprague Theater, and the Community Center. So the annual revenue generated out of District 1 is $384,650. The total funding resources available currently totals $806,842. For District 2, the annual revenue generated equals $180,529, with our available resources totaling $899,403. The plans are in need of an update, and we have yet to be able to find the time through staffing demands to appropriate the required staffing resources to complete an update of both District 1 and District 2. Maybe with the addition of the planning assistant, we'll find some time to tackle those tasks. So we have here key budget changes. These are, again, one-time capital expenditures funded by District 2. We have the library roof. Library is in need of a re-roof. The librarian's been after me since the day I got here on a re-roof, and we promised we'd budget for that. We have the need to construct an emergency supply structure. We have containers out at the City Park complex. They're not very good at protecting the contents. So we are proposing to construct a structure to house our emergency supplies. And the most important component here is the purchase and installation of a new swing set at the playground. And that is earmarked at 30,000. So the total amount assigned from District 2 is about $455,000. Next slide. So urban renewal debt obligations. These are the total payments that will be owed by the city in fiscal year 25-26. That equates to $196,268. The projects that the funds were used for, we have for the Fillmore Avenue improvements at 49,000 with the balance of 237,000, and just general capital projects at $146,856 with a balance of 920,000 for totals of 196,268 in the form of our annual payment with an outstanding debt obligation of 1.2 million. Next slide. That now leads us to the question period. I apologize for having to speak so long, but I'm glad we are now at this phase of the presentation, and I'll defer to the mayor to entertain any questions.
Anyone have any questions?
I have some questions.
Yes, Gordon.
So, first question is the proposed budget highlights three developments. Bannon Beach Motel, Gravel Point, and the partnership between the city and the school district and a private partner. In general, does development typically pay for itself? And are those three projects anticipated to pay for themselves in terms of the infrastructure being put in place and the maintenance of it?
Yeah, typically, if you have privately funded development occurring within a city, there are some instances where cities will contribute in the form of in-kind contributions to help facilitate the development or attract reuse of developed property or new development. In this case, with the likes of the Gravel Point project and the other hotel use, we are not offering any kind of in-kind contributions to stimulate or facilitate those developments. In fact, we are keeping a very close record of the amount of staff time and hours that we spend on it with the intent of recouping our operating cost. A lot of time has gone into the projects. Separately, the workforce housing project is a different animal in itself. In an effort to construct workforce housing that targets between 80 and 120% of the median income group for workforce housing, the city and the district are offering a subsidy in the form of the land value to the developer as an inducement. And that's in an effort to attract a developer that's willing to invest his private money in constructing workforce housing or affordable housing units that will be restricted through covenants. And we would control the resale of those units to ensure that they do target that income group. So workforce housing, low-income housing really can't be constructed without a significant contribution by the local government. And for Bannon, it's going to be very difficult moving forward to fund any new low-income housing or workforce housing projects without the funding resources to offer in the form of subsidy or offering in the form of the land value. Collectively, I think the contribution between the city and the district is over $1 million. And then that ends up buying down the cost of the units when they're made available. But with that said, because of our involvement in the contribution in the land value, there'll be extensive covenants recorded on the property to ensure that it is meeting the workforce housing need within the greater Bannon area.
So are you suggesting the workforce housing aside? So the other two projects, you're anticipating they're going to be a wash in terms of cost of the city?
We would like to hope so. And In other instances, there's the ability for cities to enter into development agreements. And these development agreements could be negotiated as part of the development process. For these projects that are fully entitled, we can't necessarily do that. But moving forward, there may be the ability for the city to negotiate development agreements with private developers to ensure that they fund the cost of entitling their project, fund the cost of infrastructure within their property extents, and then also possibly generate ongoing reoccurring revenue through a stipend or contribution assigned to the city in perpetuity for the added cost of services and programs, police services. It's almost like a development impact fee. But that's a tool that I think moving forward, there would be the opportunity for us to utilize that in an effort to generate ongoing recurring revenue. But fortunately, because of the two hotel uses themselves, the TOT that they generate is going to be significant, and that will help generate general fund revenue, which we could then use for other purposes. The demand on the city with regards to housing, there is a desperate need for constructing housing here, but it's a costly endeavor because when you construct new housing units, you increase the population, but as you know, we can't generate property tax revenue. We can't pass on the user fee cost. So at the end of the day, for every new resident that we attract, abandon, it places an added financial burden on the city. So if you look at it from a cost
Right.
per capita basis, you know, those are the realities of what we have to face as a local government, is that despite the fact that there is a need for housing, we will increase our population. That places an added strain on the city financially. And if we're not able to make up that difference, then it reduces the quality of services and programs provided to the existing residents.
Yes, yes.
Right.
And it seems to me that with each new development, given the situation with how much property tax money can be recovered, and also, as the proposed budget notes, that the cost of providing utilities is just not sustainable, given the amount of fees that can be collected at this point.
Correct.
So it strikes me that the hole is just going to get deeper and deeper and deeper with each development. I mean,
As
you
it's
see that
currently-
differently?
No,
Okay.
that's why I coined it to be a structural deficit in the water and wastewater utilities. So moving forward, you're going to expect the cost of producing the services to increase without the ability to adjust the user fee rates to pass on those increases onto the end user that benefits from that service. And that will continue to worsen over time and increase the amount of subsidy required from the city in the form of general fund. The end result may be very likely the city may end up having to sell its utilities. And if they were to sell their utilities, then it'd be purchased by the likes of BPA or an other for-profit business who's not regulated or restricted to the city charter's restriction on user fees. And they would immediately adjust the user fees to reflect market rate. And that would be far greater of an increase than what the city would likely have the appetite for.
Thank you. I have another question.
Okay, Gordon, are you speaking? Does everybody hear him? Okay, are they picking you up? Let's move the mic over a little closer to you.
Closer to my mouth? Okay. The $350,000 that's being provided by Bandon Dunes, which is being utilized for sergeant's position and other things, other purchases. I'm not real clear about, is that an annual payment, a one-time payment? Do we know at this point? I mean,
Yes, it's an annual payment. We entered into a 3-year MOU with automatic renewals. It is a 1% assessment self-imposed by Bandon Dunes on their bed tax. So the proceeds of the 1% bed tax would be deposited to the city of Bandon in an effort to support law enforcement specifically.
And does Bandon provide law enforcement or police protection for Bandon dudes?
Yes, we do. And
Okay.
to explain that better, I do have the chief of police present. So because I've asked them to attend the meeting, I might as well defer to the chief to respond.
You also need to give the background, though, that Bandon Dunes several years ago already allocated 6%. So a 6% TOT to the county. Part of it, most of it goes to the sheriff's department. The rest of it goes for a tourism promotion. So it's on top of that 6%. And so the chief will tell you what it means to Bandon.
Thank you.
Is this thing on? Okay, I feel a little weird coming over here in the corner. Not even enough room for me. So a little bit of a point of clarification, like the city manager said, it's through 2028. The idea being with the collapse of the sheriff's department, Bandon in general, the Bandon Police Department has been so geographically isolated over the years that we would go out and perform police duties to the greater Bandon area, i.e. Bandon Dunes, and even all the way down to the county line at times, just because of the fact if there's an emergency or something critical, a sheriff's deputy would be 45 minutes away, whereas one of my officers would be 2 to 3 minutes away, and they can go run and solve the problem within 5 to 10 minutes or preserve life or property. And it's a practice we've done for a while. We've just never really been compensated for it. Bandon officers frequently operate outside the city just to preserve life and property for the greater Bandon area. So this idea came up a couple of years ago. I started fielding it, and it's just a way of us getting compensated for the work we already do. We would enter an agreement with the sheriff, and we would be the primary law enforcement agency for Bandon Dunes and Bandon Dunes property moving forward. So right now, if something were to happen out of Bandon Dunes, it would be dispatched to the sheriff's office. They would not likely be able to get around to it, and Bandon Dunes would have to sit and wait for customer service or law enforcement services. Whereas if it was something critical, obviously, like I said before, the officer would go out there if it was life or immediate property damage. But if it's just something like a resident or a golfer who had their vehicle broken into, they'd probably wait several hours, whereas a Bandon officer could go out and take care of it in 3 to 5 minutes. So it's something we've been doing for quite a while, and we just entered into this agreement to start getting compensated for it, and we'll make it official.
And so some of that $350,000 is going to go to the sheriff, or you don't know?
That's
Okay.
strictly for the Bandon police.
6%. They get money from the 6%. This is another penny.
Gotcha.
Yeah, they already have a pretty large coffer that they get. I don't quite understand why there's no services being provided, but that's where we are.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
There's an added provision in the MOU that requires the city to continue to appropriate the existing level of funding at the time of the MOU being entered into. So the intent would be that this funding should be in addition to what the city appropriates annually as to supplement additional law enforcement resources.
Thank you. 2 more questions. Sorry. One is the proposed budget highlights reorganization of the departments were implemented. So was that done to save money, or are there other reasons?
It was designed, the end effect would be a cost savings, but the primary purpose for that is to create an organizational structure that's consistent with modern day public administration practices. In addition, it increases overall organizational efficiency and effectiveness. It requires that subordinates have a direct supervisor that then provides the oversight and direction that their subordinates require. And then it provides an additional chain of command for the higher level department heads and that of the city manager. So at the end of the day, the end result is cost savings, but it largely has to do with good government practice, best management practices from a local municipal organizational standpoint.
Thank you.
I got a couple key questions and going through the budget.
Use the mic.
This one's on.
One or the other.
A couple key questions, as we have a couple big projects, one on the derrick truck, that was something that was in the budget last year
Yes.
as a capital outlay. Is that already entered into a contract to purchase that truck? I
Yes.
see the cost has gone up on that.
Yes, what we did is we had to appropriate funding in an effort to place the order for the vehicle, even though we knew it would be about a year and a half to 2 years out. But we do have Kevin in the audience. If you'd like Kevin, approach the podium. Kevin is the department head in charge of our electric utility, and he knows everything you'd ever want to know about a digger derrick.
You hear me now? So when we first went to buy this truck, it was actually 5 years out or longer. And it was because it's right about COVID and they couldn't get materials and stuff. And that has come down in lead times. But yeah, they're expensive. And what we don't spend on the truck is gonna stay in there as a savings account for the rest of our fleet.
Okay. Since you're up there, I also saw that you bought new transformers
Yes, sir.
this year. And the costs had gone up for what was projected on those.
Yes, sir. They went up 160% since 2020. And I think they're gonna hopefully level out, and they're close to a year out, depending on what size. So, yeah, everything's gone up.
Okay, I just saw that was in the budget last year and figured like it got pushed forward.
You're not
Yeah.
talking into
Please, yeah.
the mic.
You got any other questions?
Nope.
While he's up there, may I?
Sure.
Thank you. So the digger derrick,
Yep.
one vehicle, close to 700K. Is that something that could be rented? Is it something we need for a city this size? or is it
100%
something- So
need.
we have 100% utilization of it. It's not going to sit there. We're going to have it for 1 or 2 months and sit there, have to be maintained, stored, et cetera, for another.
No,
whatever
and
number
I'll
of
tell
months.
you a little bit about our last one we have right now. In 1 year, we spent about $60,000 keeping it on the road. Yeah, without that truck, we can't set poles, we can't move wire, we can't set transformer. I mean, it is paramount to our utility.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Kevin, is it correct to say that the digger derrick that you have in operation now was originally purchased used?
correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's been a practice by the city historically in an effort to be more cost effective and create some type of cost savings. But I believe that the digger derrick is instrumental for their operation, and to have a new fully operational digger derrick that doesn't require $60,000 of annual maintenance, I think would be a win.
And when it was down for that time, we actually had to rent a truck for like two or 3 months. I'd have to look to get you exact. And it was, I want to say like 15 grand a month to rent one. Yeah.
Thank you. Yep.
Yep. Any other questions?
I have another question, but I'm not sure it's of you.
Oh, okay. I'll go sit down then.
So is there a legal reason why electricity is separated out for the rest of public works?
The operation itself, if you look at the cost of the utilities, water, wastewater, they're just under $11 million. The electric utility on its own is at 12 million. So the required management structure and leadership of 2 equal department heads is warranted to oversee public works as well as the 2 utilities. Whereas the electric utility is such a robust operation, it requires the equivalent of a department head to manage that operation on its own.
So it's a decision based on just within the city.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
I want to explain something here. There's a big history background to the TOT. Coos County commissioners about, I would say 6 or 7 years ago, decided they were going to put it out to the voters of Coos County for a 10% TOT. They would have immediately captured all the revenue from abandoned dunes. And not only were they just going to tax the motels that were outside the cities, they were going to go into the cities. At that time, we had a 6.5% tax. They would have taken everything between 6.5 and 10. So what we are doing today, a third of our revenue would now now go to the county. Nothing would go to the abandoned police. And ironically, the person who is our least favorite person, who has not helped us over the years, Rob Taylor, fought it, and it was defeated by the voters of Coos County. So they left millions of dollars on the table. And then the county decided not to go back again. And that's when we went from 6.5 to 9.5, and the voters approved it. So we wouldn't be sitting here with any money going to the Bannon PD, and we would have been locked in at 6.5% if that had just passed, you would think it would be a no-brainer. It meant nothing to the people of Coos County because they don't pay the tax. But Rob Taylor put together an extremely ardent program, and it was defeated. So that's the background of why we are fortunate to have our tax.
Another question on this, on the city charter for the utility rates. Is that locked in, they can't change that charter?
Not without a vote of the people. To change a charter, you have to have the same people who initiated it, you have to have them vote for it. It's just like the property tax that we keep talking about with ballot measures 5 and 50, then everybody's property tax rate was locked in perpetuity, so that it can never be changed, no matter whether your voters want to change it. Nobody can change it until the voters would have to go back on a state charter amendment to change that. And it's not going to happen because the people that are impacted by that are the entities who are providing the services, not the taxpayers. It was a boon for the taxpayers with ballots measures 5 and 50. So it's never going to change.
On the utility user rates, I'd also like to mention that the council recently authorized staff to form an ad hoc committee. And the ad hoc committee will be specifically tasked with looking at this issue, formulating recommendations out of the committee. There'll be 2 council members assigned to the committee, as well as the executive team on an as-needed basis, myself, Paula, and 3 members from the community at large. We've yet to establish the committee because we were trying to get through the budget process. Now that that's passed us, we'll probably look towards forming and assembling that ad hoc committee. But it's such a significant issue, to ignore it and bury our head in the sand. We could easily do that, but I think it's imperative that we as a community look at it objectively and formulate potential solutions for consideration as to how to best treat this issue, because it'll continue to be a problem moving forward. And that's at least the directives I've received from the council to move in that direction.
Then on the water issue, because we were pursuing as a city, I thought, off-channel storage. Very great. And I guess that hasn't gone anywhere, or the state's kind of squashed that, or.
When we first looked into it, I was on the original water committee.
Oops.
I was on the original water committee, and when we first looked at the off storage, it was projected at 4 million. 3 years later, it went up to 8 million. Now it's about 12 million to even try and look at it. So it's way out of our budget. It'll never happen. The property's there. We went out and walked it and purchased it and everything, but it's just not going to happen. At least until the city gets rich.
It's exactly correct. It's a matter of funding, and council member is correct that it has escalated in cost to, I think, upwards of 12 million. So that's not something we could even consider at this time.
And I saw the clarifier number 2 got delayed. That was their project that was going to happen.
Yes, that's a program for this fiscal year, but we do have the Public Works Director in attendance. Timothy, if you wouldn't mind explaining or answering that question.
Is that the one the state changed?
Yeah,
the
he's
middle?
a expert when it comes to clarifiers. I just learned what one was a couple months ago.
Is it, so when this was slated, I think in 2018 to 2020, seismic rules changed on this clarifier that threw the cost inflation on us by $1 million. So I think we have 1.8 budgeted now to try to get the second one going. Or worst case scenario, we look at x-raying the old tank with professionals and see if it's structurally sound and put all new rake arms, catwalks, motors in that. That may get us by for 25 years, but it will give us redundancy to have a backup. Because the last thing we do not want to have happen is the number one clarifier going down. That answer good enough?
Yep. Thanks.
Thanks, Timmy. Yes,
Well, first of all, Tori, great job tonight. Thank you. And to you and your staff, this is an impressive document, and I know it's a lot of work. Thank you all. We receive our audited financials somewhere in the January timeframe from the previous year. That's what it appears to be the past couple of years, so I'll assume that's going to be a regular occurrence. At that point there, do we perform an analysis of the actuals against what was budgeted for that prior year?
I'll defer to Paula, but I think that's through the budget preparation process that we do that naturally, but I'll defer to Paula for an explanation.
Yes, we do that comparison year round pretty much. We go month by month and compare usage, compare revenues. It is something that's looked at regularly. And we have actuals well before the audit's issued of what we expended,
Yep.
minus some different year-end adjustments. So we are looking at that continuously, really.
So when I mentioned the audit, I figured I hoped they'd be close to the actuals, just figured I used the last numbers. Now there's a supplemental, you'll have to forgive me, I'm not sure I have the terminology correct here, but I believe when there's some sort of 10% difference on a budget, then you do a supplemental budget process. Does that sound right?
Mhm.
That sounds right, okay. When we get the actuals, do we end up within that 10% range or outside of that range? Do we need to go through a supplemental budget process once we have those actuals?
Well, we do the supplemental process during the year because you have to gain appropriation authority to expend the money before you expend it. So you can't do it after the year's closed and you've already spent the money. So for example, last year, we did a supplemental in May that allowed for the increase in the expenditures. So this year, we don't have anything that is projected to exceed 10%. So we will have a supplemental budget going to the council in May, but it will not require a public hearing because it's under 10%.
Okay, and I hope I'm explaining which time periods I'm looking at correctly here. So and the reason I bring this up is because right now we still have the 2024 budget beginning balances in the budget. However, we have the actual numbers, which are different. And I'm talking about an analysis of the prior year activity. We have so you do go through a process where we've got the final numbers, fiscal year end, June 30th, 2024, and you do compare that against the budget that just ended for that year as well.
Correct.
Okay. Is that something that, am I missing that? Is that something that's available that I could, that we'd have access to?
I'm not, I mean, it's an analysis we do in our financial system.
Yeah.
We do a monthly report that goes to council that fund by fund lists the revenue and expenditures.
Right, but that's for
and the
the
year-to-date.
current year. And I'm talking about the prior year. I want to do analysis of how the results of the prior year.
That would be the audit.
Oh, okay. But, okay, so I've gone through the audit. Thank you. So I've gone through the audit, but I haven't seen that analysis in there. Did I miss? And that's what I'm saying. I wonder if I'm missing something there.
So the audit is the analysis of our year end, of where we ended the fiscal year. We use that as a tool for developing the budget. We use the actuals. We go each account line by line, use the actuals for the last year and even prior, depending on the account. We work with each department on what activity they're projecting for the future year to see what adjustments we need to do. is there a count in particular or something, an area in particular that is not?
Yeah, so I guess what I haven't seen yet is, let's say, we've got budgeted, I'll just use, I can't, I'm gonna use fireworks because I was so happy to see that we have fireworks somewhere else in the budget. I was really nervous when I saw $0 for that for this year. But let's say we have a budget of $25,000 for the fireworks. Let's say it comes in actually at 22,500. So there's a surplus of $2,500 there. Where and when would I see that?
You would see it in the year end. So for example, in your book right now, you have 2 years of actuals.
Yep.
And then you have the current year's budget. So the fireworks, as an example, we already have a contract, so we know it's going to be 27,000 for this coming
So
year.
but what I see here is the 2023 fiscal year and actual 2024 year
Correct.
actual. And
Our current year budget.
right, but we don't see, let's say, the fiscal year in 2024 budget. That's what I was looking at. So if we had one more column there, here we go. Not saying we have to do this, just trying to get some more information on this. But if we had a column in here that said 2023-24 budget and then actual, I'd be able to see the differences. It'd be clear to me. It'd be transparent. I can see the differences right there. Does that make sense?
Our budget book follows what's required by the
Understood.
Oregon
Understood.
budget
Oh, yeah,
law.
that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying
So-
it changes.
So I would suggest just using the book from the previous year, which is available online. Or if you don't, or you can get
Oh,
a full
so-
copy.
right, I
mean,
was
it's
wondering
all
if that
up
was-
there. We have 10 years of budgets up there.
Okay. Um,
Excuse me, are you saying that you want to compare actual to budget for 2024 or whatever year
Yes.
you're looking at? Is that what you're
Yes.
asking?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And the other reason I bring up the 10% difference is because when we do end up with the actual numbers, for instance, the monthly analysis that we have that I think you presented for April, for February in April. We have the actual beginning balance here, but I went and filled in the budgeted beginning balances and, there are differences. And that's one of the things I wonder would hit that 10% threshold to say we have to look at either the beginning balances of the current year budget or what happened in the last year budget. I've really taken this over, haven't I? And
Well, I
dried out
think,
this
you know,
for-
maybe these are questions that they're probably, we need to maybe stick more to the actual, is there anything in here that came out tonight that you want to ask a question about?
Yep.
This is
Yeah.
because we budget according to state law.
Mhm.
So, I mean, it's a bill, like she said, it's available. Look at last year's budget or the year before. So you ought to be able to trace the
It's
expense.
just for someone like me who volunteer time, et cetera, to have to do that for every single account, every single line item in the budget would be a little onerous.
Well, I guess maybe the ones that you were interested in, maybe you would look at. Does anybody else have a question? Hello? I'm
I
just
have
wondering.
another question, Mary, is on the Ferry Street Bridge replacement. That was one that's been slated last year and it's going forward again.
For lots of years, yes.
So is that actually going to start? Is the engineering phase done or are we ready to start?
We're still in the process of the engineering phase. But for the details of that, I'll ask Tim to address you all. But it is a very involved project and it's a very expensive project. It's years out, I believe.
Okay, Ferry Creek Bridge is coexisting with the Fillmore Avenue Pump Station, two different projects, but in the very same proximity. There has been archaeological studies done on the south side of the bridge. They need to come back and do the north side of the bridge for Ferry Creek. There's been geotechnical boring for the bridge for both projects. We are hoping 2026, there will be groundbreaking construction on that thing.
2026, okay.
So another year.
Yep.
So there's still a detour? I don't really see it, but the signs used to be there for a detour,
Yes, there's still
Are they still-
technically a weight limit on the bridge.
but not really I mean, it's not enforced that much.
Correct.
Well, I didn't think so because the signs don't appear to be up there anymore. So,
So things are in the works. So we're hoping everything aligns. Summer of 2026 is the planned date if everything goes to fruition.
thanks, Jimmy. Anybody else have any questions now that, because I know our staff, they maybe like the chief probably wants to go home. Is there anything else that anybody has a question about the police department or anybody? Bear, do you have any questions?
He's muted.
He's probably gone to sleep. Come back, Bear. I guess not. All right, well, it's important to remember that the next budget meeting, which is where now there will be a lot of discussion at the next budget meeting. It seems funny, we have millions of dollars in budgeting, but most of the discussion centers around the state revenue sharing, which is minuscule, but it's important to the community. And that will be what we're going to be looking at next week. And so the next budget meeting is next Monday night at 7 o'clock. And we are adjourned. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And no, I did not go to sleep.
Okay.
Better.
With your binders that were passed out in the back section, we have all the state revenue sharing applications.
Yeah.
And there's also the funding requests and what was requested last year.
Here.